Hello, I am Michael Panofsky, and I am here to be interviewed for the 15th year anniversary of my father's novel, Barney's Version. So I guess to start I should talk about the actual book itself. So a long time ago, back in about the 1950s, my father became friends with someone named Tyree McIver. And about in 1996, I would say, he released a novel of his memoirs and how the events in his life took place. And my father was in a lot of the novel, and he found some things quite absurd, so he decided to write his own version of the events, hence the name. And so I was put in charge of overseeing it and adding any little corrections. I wasn't allowed to alter the actual memoirs, but I was allowed to put little footnotes at the bottom of each page for things that he got wrong factually, like dates of hockey games and scores and whatnot. Although when it came to hockey games, good old Pops never really got the score wrong. So my father's novel takes place not at the very beginning of his life, but about when he was 23, and sometimes jumps to a little bit before that, back when he was just a schoolboy. But most of it takes place from 23 and on, and it's divided up into three parts. The first part, when he's married to his first wife, Clara Chernovsky, who is actually mentally ill and ends up committing suicide, not because of my father or anything, she was mentally ill, but later became a world-renowned poet and artist past her death, preceding her death. And then the second part of the novel is actually dedicated to the second Panofsky, who, for privacy's sake, we do not reveal her name, and I will not in this interview. And the third part of the novel is my mother, Miriam Greenberg. So my father's book talks about a lot of things, but as the interview's about me, I will just talk about for the parts that I'm in. I'm in it. I come in every now and once in a while as my father's memory jumps around. Towards the end, Pops actually developed Alzheimer's, and me and my brother and sister, we had to get checked out to make sure that everything was alright in the noggin. And so far everything seems good, but Pops passed away with Alzheimer's, and it was strange, especially at his 80th birthday party. He didn't even recognize us. His face lit up for the balloons and whatnot, but he didn't even know my name. Moving on, Pops lived long enough to see me get married to my beautiful wife, Caroline, and unfortunately we weren't able to have children together. But my father also had another son and another daughter, so I have a brother and a sister. His second child was my brother Sloan, younger brother Sloan, and then of course came my sister Kate last. And she has blessed us with a niece and a nephew, so I get to see them all the time, so my childly wants have been filled. So back when my father was still alive, I bought a lot of stock in Microsoft, and I brought some real estate around the world. So nowadays I'm just pretty much collecting the money on my Microsoft stock. I sold some of it back in 2005, and then I ended up buying stock in Apple, and that has done quite good for me recently. And then once he passed away, that was in there too. And then of course his divorce to my mother, because well, I guess I can say what happens in this interview. My mother had flown away to Montreal for a little bit while my father stayed back in Toronto. My mother had flown to Toronto and my father stayed back in Montreal, and in her absence my father was weak and ended up going to a bar, getting drunk, and had sex with another woman. So that ended up in their divorce, and she ended up marrying Uncle Blair, as we all came to know him. He came and stayed with us back when Mom and Pop were married, and they became really close, and there was no cheating or anything then, but once my father and mother got divorced, Blair comforted her and ended up marrying her. So now Uncle Blair is stepdaddy. So since then a lot has happened. As I said, I'm pretty much just collecting money and just touring around the world with my beautiful wife, checking out all these vacation spots and whatnot, and every once in a while I come back to check on Kate, visit my nieces and nephews, and talk to Sloan. Since my father's death, Sloan was shocked to find out that he asked me to actually edit the novel versus Sloan, who was actually a writer, and it really got his head into gear, and he quit drugs and now has become a world-renowned author with books outselling even my father's memoirs. Kate, as I said, gave us a beautiful niece and nephew, and she is still married and just having a wonderful life, and her husband is a very successful businessman. As for my mother, she's gotten very old, and she's still with Blair, but she's still very happy. Suffered a minor stroke about when the book came out, but still nothing has happened since then, so we're happy to hear that. My father's first wife, as I said, committed suicide, and the second, Mrs. Polnowski, she actually died about 2 years ago from a cardiovascular disease. She had a lot of heart problems. She was a big lady. She loved the brisket. So yeah, since my father's novel, that's about what's happened with all of us. Thank you for watching my interview. Please go pick up the book and check out the Tarnowski Foundation.
They say the only mistakes you make are the ones you don't learn from. My father thought that was bull. But in his lifetime, I think he made enough mistakes for all of us, his children. So if there's one thing that we can take from him, from his life, from his memoirs, is that cherish the ones you love. Don't take them for granted. And although sometimes life can throw you curveballs, like in a game of pool, you keep trying to sink the 8 ball or sink any ball, and you just kept getting disappointed, and you keep missing your cue, and you don't know what's going to happen, and you just start to lose faith. You need to struggle on, because one day you're going to hit that 8 ball and you're going to sink it, and maybe the cue ball is going to go in after it too, and technically you lose, but on the inside you're a winner, and you know it. And I think that's what we can take from his life, that even through all the mistakes, as long as you persevere, you come out a winner. And in the end, all we have is our memories. All we have are the memory of the mistakes we made. And through that memory, people can learn from them, and then they can do better. And through them, you can live on forever. Through them, you can have your mistakes be righted, and they can live on through you. And even though it hurts to see them leave, we need to be happy that we even had the chance to know them. Because some people just aren't that lucky. But we are the lucky few.
My child lead wants it in Philly. Sound like a pedophile. Foundation.
Oh my God, I'm sweaty.